As we've been talking the past couple of weeks about faith, just a little recap. The first week we talked about how faith, that God is doing a new thing, that God is up to something new, and that in our lives we can use something new, some different seasons, spiritual seasons, and we use this metaphor that spring is coming, that regardless of where we are in our life, that the possibility of God's newness and God doing a fresh work in our life is still ripe and ready to come. Last week we looked at the character of Abraham, and we saw how that Abraham had this great faith that in Hebrews 11 they did an extended treatment about the life of Abraham, and that he had such great faith that he, regardless of what God asked him to do and what God put on his heart and led him, that he obeyed. And so that we were to live by faith, that we live by faith and not by sight as followers of Christ, and that we see things differently, that regardless of what it might look like, it could be something totally different. And so we've been challenged each week to embrace the life of faith. And this week we're going to take it a little step further and say, what does it look like when we are in the lion's den, when it looks like it is over, it is finished, there's no chance for us? What does faith look like for us then? We were supposed to talk about Horton and a Who this week, but I've told you for the past 2 weeks that the Who's freak me out from Dr. Seuss. So we're not talking about them because they're really weird, okay? I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know why this Whoville and all that. I don't know why. And I've got animal baggage and drama from many scars, literally, physically and mentally, and soul scars, because I don't even want to say it with the kiddos in here because they're going to make fun of me again, but let's just say there's a traumatic experience a long time ago with an animal that about there would be no more Dusty if someone didn't come rescue me from this mega duck. And then because of that, I just want one aw, like, or sorry, you almost died from the hands of a duck. I mean, we feel sorry for you. We like you, so we want you alive. Because of that, then, there was a ban on animals in my household. I mean, there was no gerbil, no sneetch, no snail, no llama, no duck-billed platypus. I mean, nothing was allowed in the Craig household until this random cat came on Christmas Eve and rang the doorbell. I don't know how, like, cats are weird like that. I guess they flush toilets too. And rang the doorbell, and then we had a cat, and it knew that I didn't like the cat. And we didn't know if he was a he or a she for a while, because I think veterinarian offices were closed on Christmas. And long story. And so he knew that I didn't like it, and it knew that I didn't like or whatever. So he decided to start using the restroom on my clothes and thinking that my clothes were a litter box. So I've got animal drama, so I'm just throwing it out there, being real and transparent for you. Luckily, you laughed and took that. It's okay. Just a poll, does anyone else in here just not like animals? One? Go ahead. Yes, one? Okay. I'm a good company. All right, here we go. Watch, one day I'm going to get married and my wife's going to be like, yeah, I really want a big dog. I'm going to be like, oh, have you thought about a caterpillar? That'd be great. So I don't know what that had to do with anything, but we're trying to get all the ADD out at front so we can make sense of something, right? All right, so here's the deal. Daniel has been, we're in Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 3 you're pretty familiar with because it's a story of Daniel's three friends, or his amigos, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they refuse to bow the knee, and so they get thrown into the fiery furnace, and in some crazy way, they are not taken ablaze by being in the furnace. And that this fourth character, this angel of the Lord, appears in the furnace with them to show that they were taken care of. And it's this theme of Daniel chapter 1 through 6 of that though you might be persecuted for what you believe in, God will remain faithful. Thus, in chapter 6, we get to a very familiar story of Daniel in the lion's den. Now, the backstory of this is that Daniel's been put into a spot where he's we'll get to that in just one sec. Daniel's been put into a spot where he's in leadership. He's been given a lot of authority. He walks upright. He's someone that fears God. And because of that, his friends were quite jealous and envious. They knew that he prayed to this God 3 times a day, very loyal, very, very active in his faith in this God. And so they set up a trap and basically said to the king, they said, if you come up with a way that we don't want anybody praying to anybody but you, you're the one king that needs to be worshiped and bowed down to, knowing that this would really mess with Daniel, knowing that he was faithful and that he wasn't going to change because of an edict or a decree. So King Darius releases a decree stating that if you're going to pray to anybody, you have to pray to me, and that if you pray to another god, you will get thrown into the den with lions. So that sets the stage. So now here in Daniel chapter 6, verse 16, this is what we see. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Notice lions, plural here, more than one. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed, a.k.a. he ain't going nowhere, and there's a bunch of lions. All right? Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating, without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he has shut the mouths of the lions." Whoa. "They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Whoa. I mean, we don't hear stories like that anymore. I mean, any of you been in a lion's den recently? That you survived it, right? Bear Grylls in the house? No. I mean, this guy was in a lion's den, and he had faith and trusted, and God sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions. That's pretty unbelievable. And it says that he was not harmed or touched because he had trust in his God. So here's where I think the tension comes in. Somewhere along the line, somewhere in our faith journey, as a church, big church, capital C, as a group of followers of Christ, we stop believing in the impossible. We stop believing in miracles. We stop believing in the supernatural, in signs and wonder, and the power of God, and the might of God, and the strength of God. Somewhere along the way, that we figured, oh, that's a great Sunday school story. That was cool then. And so the question that I've been wrestling with all week and been struggling with and thinking through is, do I still believe that God can shut the mouths of lions today? Actually, the question I had was this, felt like it was in my spirit, was, when did you stop believing in miracles? And why did you stop believing in miracles? And I think that's a question that we have to wrestle with. Because in our story, we see these great acts of faith, these great acts of God's hand, all in the lives of people and in nations. And if we look back at our faith today, do we go, does God still work like that? I don't see that in the middle of my lion's den, in the middle of my trial. And so, journey with me for a sec. If you say, you know what, I don't know about that impossible stuff and the miracle thing. I mean, that seems a little, it doesn't seem rational, it doesn't make sense. Let's talk about rational for a sec, okay? We believe that our God spoke the world into existence. That out of nothing, God spoke and said, "Let there be light," and that there was light. And then there was night and day, that there was darkness and light, that God threw stars into space. He created animals and creatures, even cats, and that he created them in such a way that put man and women over the earth and to subdue it and to multiply. They were to have dominion, that he created all the little trees and the fish and Nemo and all the great things, even hobbits maybe. Hopefully one day we'll see a real hobbit. So we believe in creation like that, okay? And then if that's not enough, then there's like these things that happen in the Old Testament where there was a Red Sea and God's people were about to be taken over by an army, and he parted the Red Sea. And that there was this guy named Noah who was told to build an ark so that God would be able to keep a remnant of his people. And he built the ark. And we get to the person of Jesus, and now this person named Jesus is God with a face, God in flesh. And this Jesus set aside his right to be God and came down in the form of a human. And he was born of a virgin. And he walked and lived in such a way that we're able to see God, because at this time no one had seen God yet. and that Jesus was able to operate in the miraculous where he would heal blind eyes and he would heal diseases and he would touch the sick and the lepers, and it was unbelievable. And now, then think about this. Jesus just took up a cross so that God could be in relationship with his people, that he was crucified as an innocent man, that he who knew no sin became sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God, the right standing with God, crucified, and then 3 days later rose from the dead and saw many witnesses. I mean, we believe that stuff. So if you're thinking, I don't know about it, believing in the impossible, y'all, we believe some weird stuff. And it only makes sense in light of the character of God. One writer says that the things Christians believe are so absurd that they have to be true because no one in their right mind would believe this stuff. So why don't we believe God for the impossible? If you look back over your life, you can look at your faith journey, as young as you are, as old as you are, and you could see that there's been times where the impossible has happened, where miraculous and signs and wonders and God's power has taken you through a journey and through the mouths of lions. Because see, something that we have in common, all of us, is that we all have various lions in our life. We all have various lions' dens that we find ourselves in. It might be a relationship, it might be financial, it might be a healing of some sort, it might be pain and scar, it might be just a bad past. We have all these different lions that we constantly need to be rescued from. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we believe that God can still shut the mouths of the lions today? That God can do the impossible, that God is able to do things that make no sense. There's a quote by a pastor in Charlotte that really, really gets to the heart of this. And he says this, that if you're not daring to believe God for the impossible, that you're sleeping through some of the best parts of your life. Wow. That if you are not daring to believe God for the impossible, you're sleeping through some of the best parts of your life. I don't want to sleep through life. I want to see God do the impossible and see God do things that only God can do in a God-sized vision for my life and for this church and for us as a people, to see him do things that go, wow, he shut the mouths of the lions. So powerful, so poignant to believe this. And I think Jesus knew that we would face various lions in our lives, because in John 16, verse 33, he says this, that in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. I've always wanted to do a series. Okay, this stays in here, okay? Are we cool? I've always wanted to do a series called Big Butts in the Bible. Okay, think about it. Like, in this world, you will face trouble, but, right? And for Noah, like, the whole world was wicked and there was no one righteous on the earth, but Noah. And think about this. I mean, if these phrases are left out of our scriptures, our story would be totally different. Okay, y'all can't go tell anybody this to get me in trouble, okay? All right, my pastors are out of town, so are we safe? Okay, all right. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But that makes sense. So here Jesus is saying, in this world, you will face trouble. But fear not, because I have overcome the world. And so the idea of the impossible, of God being able to shut the mouths of our lions, is quite possible because Christ has overcome. You know, this isn't the first mention of a lion and the only mention of lion in Scripture. In fact, this lion imagery is carried out in some various different aspects of our story. And we see that in 1 Peter chapter 3, I think, we see that the enemy is called a lion. Look, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Huh, interesting. It's the idea that we have lions in our lives, and here's this, Peter's writing and saying, your enemy, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Now, it's very important that we have to note this, that in verse 24 of Daniel 6, it turns to like PG-13, and so we didn't share it, but basically the king, he reverses his edict, and the people that persecuted Daniel, guess where they ended up? In the lion's den. And you think, oh, these might have been nice lions, that's why they didn't eat Daniel.